Hi, Tim.
Hello.
Yeah, now's the awkward period where we just get to hang out until everybody else shows up. So
Yeah.
you can do whatever you need.
I'm glad I looked at the thing because I thought it was at 2:40 instead of 2:30 for some reason.
Well, it is at 2:40. It's just I started at 2:30 because like it's easier, it's just quicker to do those kind of whole numbers or the half numbers on Zoom. And it's like how I get to class 10 minutes before we start, just,
Mhm.
because everybody's milling in around the same time. So class technically does start at 2:40. So
Okay.
yeah, this is just kind of everybody getting here
Mhm.
and making sure that everybody can access Zoom and that kind of thing.
Right.
I'm just glad that you remembered it was going to be on Zoom, because I'm sure some people will forget, even though I sent emails.
That'd be
We'll
bad.
see. We will see. So Carmen Ricci is who?
That is my Italian name
Okay,
for
okay.
my Italian class.
I see. I just when I saw a Carmen Ricci in the waiting room, I'm like, should I let this person in? I'm sure it's one of ours. So who else would be wanting to come in? So I am gonna make everybody put their actual names just for the sake of your classmates being able to match names to faces. For some reason, when my daughter was doing Zoom classes last year, I logged around to my Zoom account once. And now whenever I get on Zoom, her name appears instead of mine. So I have to change it every time. Okay, we're just gonna wait a few more minutes. Hopefully we'll have other people join us.
Okay. Try to get my robe off. Okay. Did you enjoy your snow break?
Yeah, it was bizarre. I appreciated the excuse to sit on the couch in my pajamas more than usual,
Mhm.
but it also meant like 5 days of nonstop mommy daughter time.
That's always a good thing, though. So,
Depends. But it was really fun watching her play in the snow, um, build a snowman, and we had snowball fights.
mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I think it was good. I think everybody needed a break, and I felt kind of bad because y'all weren't going to get a spring break. So this is like Mother Nature saying they're going to get a spring break.
Mhm.
I mean, they can't go anywhere during this spring break,
True.
but they're going to get one. So I hope you guys got caught up on sleep and Netflix and stuff like that.
I did. And then Thursday, like Wednesday night, when it started snowing, like really snowing,
Yeah.
my roommate and I did a midnight stroll in the snow, and we got lots of good pictures on campus because her car is like 4-wheel drive.
Oh,
And so
nice.
she was able to actually get out. Like my car was not. My car was under ice. All that.
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
Hey there. One of my cars is all-wheel drive, and so when I needed to go out on Wednesday morning, after spending half an hour chipping the ice off, I was able to drive that. But yeah, okay. I have the waiting room set up for some reason, so I'm gonna have to watch that. But yeah, I mean, but it's a good thing because I think in that kind of weather, most people should not be driving, no matter how good your car is.
Yep. And then so like Thursday we did a whole like snow day. Like we woke up early, went out in the snow. We went on campus and like walked around campus in the snow, and then we went to Greek Row where the big hill is and went sledding. So
Oh, you went sledding?
yes.
What did you sled on?
My boogie board that I went I took
It works.
It does
Yeah.
work very well, actually. Like my roommate had her, she decided to use it. We have a tin trash can, so she decided to go old school and use the, tin trash can lid, and it worked, but not as well as mine. So we ended up using mine the most.
Yeah.
I live up by Walter Hill, which is basically the middle of nowhere, so no saw trucks are ever out there. So our roads, like we couldn't go anywhere for the entire time it was
Oh,
snowing
man.
because it was just like a layer of ice off of
Oh,
our like
man.
roads.
Yeah. Yeah, the road in front of my house, which is Lytle Street, it is bad, but like if I could get down to Middle Tennessee Boulevard, I was okay.
Yep.
So I was able to like go to Walgreens once. And then, I decided to go see if I could go to the grocery store on Friday, and everybody else in the world had that idea. So, okay. We're about to get started. Let's see how many of you. Well, there are 8 of you. Hopefully some more people will be coming in. I'm glad that you all remembered that we were having class over Zoom today. Of course, this was supposed to be last week, but everybody knows that doesn't count. But I hope that you all had at least a good mental break last week and got to sleep and didn't lose your power or anything like that. That would have sucked. So, okay. This is what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna try to let you out a little bit early today because I have an online conference later tonight and I need some time before then to go and pick up my child. So we'll, if we're not done completely by like 5:25, then somebody just say, "Time's up, Dr. Graham." And so that's good because sometimes I talk on and on, I don't even notice. But we will have, and I did set my alarm on my phone to have a break because you still need a break, especially in a Zoom class. And so we will have a break in about like an hour and 15 minutes. And if we find that being on Zoom for 2 full hours is like unbearable, then the next time we have to have class on Zoom, it'll be shorter. So we'll see. I've done tons and tons of Zoom stuff, as I'm sure y'all have as well. And I know how it can be, especially at the end of the day. So we are going to talk about the readings that were assigned for today, as well as the readings that were assigned for last week. So I hope that you've at least been able to keep on track with the course reading schedule. You had 2 different articles for last week. And then you had a book chapter plus a really short article by the same dude for this week. And so last week was a bit more, again, additional analysis and some material culture theory. And this week is something much more practical, talking about everyday objects. And we will have show and tell, since I hope that you are all in places where you have access to your material culture repertoire. I am not at home, so, but I'm in my office where there's tons of crap anyway, so plenty of stuff. All right, so that's kind of what we're gonna do. Does anyone have any questions to start off with? Or do you just have to share a snowman story or something like that? Everybody good? All right.
I mean, I can, but
Well, it's a real treat to see your faces, like your actual faces. There are only 2 of them that I'd ever seen before in previous classes, so that's always nice. That's one of the good things about Zoom. And Vincenzo, this is the first time I've seen you. I know you've been watching on the video through D2L, so I'm glad that you're able to join us in a way that everybody else knows that you're here. Do you want to, do you go by Vincenzo? Is there something else you prefer to be called? Tell us about yourself.
Actually, I go by Cole, my middle name.
Oh, okay, I see that on there, and I figured that might be why you put that on there. All right, and so have you been like following along on the D2L video, and how's that been going?
It's new to me.
Okay.
It was a little bit confusing at first because I like the first week I thought that things would like be through Zoom, and then it would like go to the video tab afterwards
Oh yeah.
or something like that. So I missed that first week and had to go back and watch that.
Okay.
But other than that, yeah, I've been watching the videos from like I've been watching them live, but
I've seen some of your, the notes that you've left. I know that you're missing a lot that's going on, and I'm sure that you get that impression. But I'm glad that you're at least trying that. So everybody, if you can't make it to class, it's still possible to participate, as you know. Now, one thing about today's class is I am recording it. I'm not actually going through the D2L Zoom though. What I have been doing for the past year now is I have my own YouTube channel. And so I kind of make a playlist for each class. So whenever there's like a good YouTube video that's kind of related that I think you guys might like, I toss that into the playlist, and then I put all of our recorded classes over Zoom in there as well. And I make it unlisted, so it's not like everybody can watch you guys, because I know that might be weird, but why would they do that? I don't know. But so Kelsey knows the deal because she was in that kind of class last semester. So you can go back and watch these. It just may not be available through D2L. It's going to be available through a YouTube link that I will send you hopefully tomorrow. I like I said, I have to run real fast after the end of this class, and I might forget to do any kind of YouTube posting today. So it'll have to be tomorrow. Okay. Right. One last thing. 7 of you have submitted your papers to D2L So congratulations for turning those in on time. The rest of you, it's not too late. Please upload your essays. They were due last week. You guys got an extra week to write a 5-page essay. So no excuses. Please upload those today. And if you can't get them uploaded today, just send me an email and get them uploaded when you can, because you're still going to get credit for turning it in, even if it's late. Life is crazy. Let's be lenient. I want you to get credit. So yeah, essays. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a PowerPoint screen just to help keep me, hold on a sec, to keep me kind of organized. Let me put that PowerPoint like at the beginning. Where am I? Okay, share screen. And we might even do a little group stuff later. All right, so, oh, no. I have to stop sharing and I have to share. Hang on. I'm a little rusty on this, but I have to actually, oh man, what? How do I do this? Okay, I'm gonna try this again. There, okay, can you see the slide? Give me a thumbs up, like this kind of thumbs up.
Yes.
All right, thanks. Yeah, because sometimes sharing your screen means you aren't sharing what you think you're sharing. Okay, so yes, the topic for today, according to the reading schedule, is examining everyday objects, and we'll get to that a little bit later. With a little bit of material culture analysis, part 2, which was the topic for last week. So this is weeks 4 and 5 smushed together. And now you understand why there's a picture of this fork and knife. This is the same image that's on your syllabus, because you read about how the fork got its tines for today. Don't forget, yes, I'm going to keep reminding you about this. I am making this an extra credit opportunity. This is, again, the Strickland Scholar Lectures for the History Department. And if you take any other history classes, you've already heard this announcement a million times now. And the first one is coming up next week, Thursday, March the 4th. And yes, these are in the evening, and yes, that might be inconvenient. But these are always like really eminent scholars, and every single one of these that I've been to has been super interesting, and there's always good discussion afterwards. So if you can attend these, and if you write like a 1-page write-up afterwards, and by 1 page, I mean like double space 1 page, you know, about your reactions to what was discussed, then you can give that to me, and it'll work into some extra credit somehow in a to be determined kind of way. So keep that in mind if you need that extra incentive to do what would be a good thing to do anyway. Okay, next, I don't have, I do actually, I guess this kind of is social media, but it's larger than social media. So my social media for today is the most awesome material culture object award goes to the Mars Perseverance rover. And I hope you were all watching this landing. It was absolutely exciting. And I cannot believe I'm seeing a photograph taken on Mars. Like, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that. And
I think the coolest part was the sky. How you get to see like every single star, planet.
You can see the Milky Way. I tried to find that image because I've been seeing it all over my Facebook feed, but no, could I find it today? So if you guys don't know what Abby is talking about, there is another image, kind of a panorama where you can move your mouse around, and it's at night when you can pretty much see every single star in the sky. And that's because there's no light
planets
pollution on
and
Mars.
Milky Way, and like
It's amazing. And
crazy.
again, it's like we've seen stuff like that before, but only in movies and not like actual, this is a real photograph, undoctored. And I just, thinking back to when I was a kid and imagining that kind of thing happening one day, and now it's happening, it's just, wow. So yes, this rover here is quite an amazing piece of material culture that says a lot about our resources available in the United States, the educational attainment, the investment in exploration, which says a lot, advancements in technology, it says everything. So any other thoughts on Perseverance rover? No.
I personally was I fangirled a little bit, but
Yeah. And the coolest part was just seeing how excited all those people were in that room. I don't know if y'all were watching, but there was this one point where it just said, what did it say? Something, the landing, I can't remember what, they didn't say touchdown, but it was pretty much like that kind of thing. And then everyone in the room just gets up and starts cheering. And then that it happened, because otherwise you're like, what was that? Just another thing happening.
I was a little surprised at how like mundane their uniform was. It looked like a Best Buy uniform almost. You'd think that NASA would have like cool uniforms, or designs, but
No, that's probably Space Force. But no, yeah, they looked like it was like so business cash. And I'm like, I wonder if they usually are dressed a little bit more, but because everybody over the past year has just gotten way more like I'm wearing flip-flop. Of course I wear flip-flops anyway, but it's like, I wonder if, but then they weren't working from home. Obviously you can't do that from home. But yeah, and there's so many of them look so young. And one day it'll happen to all of you, where you'll see people on the TV and they will all be younger than you, and you'll be like, when did that happen? It'll happen. And so I'm like, who are all these people landing things on Mars? They're like half my age. But it was great to see that, and the diversity among the scientists there. It's just a real kind of moment where I was proud of my country. So yay. All right. So yes, that's the most awesome material culture object award, and I get to bestow it apparently this week. So there it is. All right. Now I know you all want to do show and tell, but you're gonna have to wait a bit, okay? Because we do have some content to get through first. As in material culture analysis. So let's talk about a little bit about those two articles that you read for last week, the Csikszentmihalyi and the Hunt. So we're all going to learn how to say both of those names. But we're going to start off with John Dixon Hunt. So I think you can all pronounce that already. And this was the one about signs. And this was you can't tell because you're just getting the PDFs off D2L. But okay, I showed you this book because this is the same book that I got the Prown and the Friedel articles from. And I explained that they were all at a conference together and reading off their papers, and those were gathered together and made into this book. So this very short paper is at the very end. So you might have gotten that impression when you were reading it, that he comes at the end and he has to respond to everything and kind of sum things up. So that's, kind of what he's doing. But also, Prown went at the beginning. So here's a guy who listens to Prown's paper and is like, oh, I have so many things I need to say in response to that. But he has to hold that in to the very end, by which time his responses have altered slightly. And again, you get that impression when you read this. So, so basically, since I know that this might be way far back in your mind's memory and you may not remember exactly what he was saying, I've summed it up for you. So basically he's saying that material culture analysis needs a plurality of approaches, which is a nice thing to say to sum up a conference when people have taken a plurality of approaches. But then he says something, and this is really interesting because this is what Behi was saying 2 weeks ago in class. So you anticipated this. Our own linguistic formation determines how we analyze objects, so we can't really separate object from the language that we use to talk about it. So all this talk that Pround says about how objects transcend language, and therefore, you know, they're like a pure form of analyzing culture without all these trappings of language to muddy it up, that can't be. And this is what John Dixon Hunt is saying. So he says, well, okay, metaphors is what Pround was talking about, but a good way to think about objects is as signs. And this is where Hunt's background really informs the way that he looks at material culture, because while he does, he's an expert in like kind of gardenscapes and that kind of thing, which explains why he latched onto the one other garden landscape paper and used that as an example. He also has a background in literature and art. So he's very well formed in the, you know, the literature behind literature and linguistics and the relationship between language and culture. So signs, you know, what does that mean? Signs or symbols, that kind of thing. Basically, if you think about objects as messages to be decoded, which means they have to be translated, and not just translated from one, like, you know, from like English to French or something like that, but translated from, well, this is the way you think about it because of your context, and this is the way I would think about it because of my perspective and context. So the differences can be attributed somewhat to our different contexts and perspectives and own educations and that kind of thing, plus the purposes that we want to actually use this for. And why do we do any of this? As always, every single one of these things is going to pretty much be about getting at this fancy French word that we use all the time, mentalité, which you're like, why would you use the French word and not just say mentality? Well, it's because French linguistic theory was so influential on the study of, you know, English literature, history, and those kinds of things in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that English absorbed this word mentalité to mean this. And if you say mentality, it'll just be the word mentality. But if you say mentalité, you'll be like, oh, well, that's this academic term that has a specific meaning in this context. And basically it's how people thought in the past. You know, why do we study material culture at all? To get at culture. We use materials to study culture. And if we can understand culture, then we can understand how people thought in the past. So it's the ultimate holy grail here. So that's kind of what they mean by mentalité. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I do want to let you guys, if you have anything to say, any questions or comments about this article, it's very, very short. You probably read it and forgot completely what he said in it. That's okay. I forgive you. It was a crazy week last week. But read this slide again and then go back and review it, and then maybe it'll make a bit more sense. But my plan last week was to go in depth into the theory behind this, and I have altered that plan to not go very much in depth, but just to mention two things. And that two things that are responses to this problem that we just talked about, which is the relationship between language and material culture, or the relationship between language and any type of primary source that we want to use to study the past. Because as historians, that's the only way that we can get to the past, is through primary sources. But how do we get to primary sources when there's like this whole it's like, you know, we walk around completely encased in our own experiences and education and perspectives and context and needs of the moment and brain processes and that kind of thing. And everything that we see or do or read outside of that has to go through that case to get there. So it gets altered somehow. So how do we overcome that? So before this was a problem, this was just taken for granted that when you say something about material culture, you're using language to describe material culture and everybody knows what you mean. So basically, the problem arises out of structuralism, but structuralism is a foundation. So just because things have come after this doesn't mean that this has been superseded. This is a foundation for where we're at now. And structuralism is a very important concept that you learn in sociology, anthropology, literary theory, you know, history, and that kind of thing. Basically, and this is my off the head definitions, this is what structuralism says. It says that culture is an underlying structure made up of interrelationships between people and their environments. So in other words, culture is something you can't see. The only things that you can see are how these interrelationships manifest themselves, and they do that through objects, rituals, and relationships. So material culture objects you see are one of the things that are where culture reaches the surface of the world of the tangible, and we can finally see it. You know, it's like a fish coming out of water. It's like, we can get it now. We're on land here, and we can finally get at what's beneath through these things that can transcend that barrier. And this is usually attributed to Claude Lévi-Strauss and some other people. And then, of course, so structuralism was pretty much the governing kind of framework for looking at things in the 50s and 60s and even into the 70s. But then you get, of course, post-structuralism, which is a name that is just vaguely given to the kinds of thoughts that come after and start to think, well, the thing about structuralism that's a problem is that you are basically saying that you as the anthropologist can stand neatly outside of this culture and objectively say what is going on. But you yourself, as the observer, have your own cultural structures that are affecting the way that you're viewing these other cultural structures. So you gotta somehow we have to stop thinking that we can just objectively reach in, grab a fact, bring it out and interpret it, and it means the same thing to everybody. You know, that's just not going to happen. And we have to acknowledge all the different things that we're bringing to the interpretation that might be confusing things. So in other words, our attempts to understand, interpret culture are fraught with our own cultural baggage. That's a very loose way of describing something incredibly complex. But y'all can go to grad school and learn about it in a more complex way if you want. So, you know, you are welcome. And then this is where you get people pioneering this kind of ideology, Michel Foucault, Jacques Derrida, Paul Lambert, and other people like that. And so I mentioned before, you know, Derrida very, very famously said there is nothing outside the text, basically meaning that even the words we use to describe something are encasing us, and we can't get out of that to a pure understanding of anything, because it's all, we can't communicate without the text, which will affect the way that we see everything else. And if it's confusing to you, it's okay. It's okay. It's supposed to be. The whole point of this is to confuse things because we are discovering problems. And this is kind of a neat connection to the analysis of everyday objects, which we're going to get to later, because Henry Petroski's whole point is the reason why objects evolve is because you run into problems. And then you have to solve for those design failures and evolve into a new form. And so that's kind of what, the theory is doing too. Basically, it's not just that we study things, it's the way we study things changes just as much because of all the different influences that go into just the way that we interpret. And so, yeah. Any questions, comments, clarifications? I'm not going to hold you responsible for more than what's on this slide, but I do want you to be at least familiar with the fact that structuralism and post-structuralism affect the way we all learn about material culture today. So
I actually had a curiosity about I was curious about, he asked a parenthetical question that was like, indeed, can one have a visual metaphor? And I wasn't,
right.
I didn't understand if he was being like metaphorical or like seriously asking that
Right,
question.
like, I mean, if a metaphor is something that exists within language, then what is a visual metaphor, which is what Prown was talking about.
Like words themselves are a visual metaphor for ideas. So
Yeah,
cyclical.
that is true. And I think the idea, I think a metaphor, something that stands in for something else that is understood within a culture, I see that as not necessarily being based in words, but I can see that Hunt being somebody, trained in, from an English literature perspective, would, maybe he has a different, more exacting definition of metaphor that could be. But yeah, you can tell that he was actually pretty restrained. I felt like he probably wanted to criticize Prown a bit more harshly than he ended up doing. But this is, again, like what I said 2 weeks ago, which you may not remember, that Prown may sound a bit crazy, I guess, from time to time in that article that you read, but everybody else who comes after has to respond to it. Out of all of those papers, that's the one that Hunt was like, okay, this is the one I got to talk about. So it really sets the stage for a lot of the material culture approaches.
I mean, he talks about
Xander?
When Prown talks about the idea of connoisseur, like, oh my god, I can't, connoisseurship, or like connoisseurship anyways, and he talks about how like the idea of it, he accepts the fact that it sounds kind of elitist in a way, and I feel like with time it's only become more of a like kind of dirty word, you know what I mean? Like his ideas have kind of like aged poorly, and the way he like kind of presents them, I don't know, that's the way I kind of took it.
Well, how many of you think that connoisseurship means elitists, kind of?
Well, no, I don't personally. I just feel like a lot of people do. You know what I mean?
Well, and there's a good reason for that. Partly because it's a hyper specialized area now. And if you've ever watched Antiques Roadshow, you can understand that. But it also means, and the way Prown was using it was, there is such a thing as being very familiar with different styles so that educated people can look at something and say, oh, that's a 15th century manuscript from Italy, or that is a 17th century cabinet from Massachusetts. There are certain clues. It's like when you watch a film and you're like, oh, this feels like a Quentin Tarantino film. There are certain clues that even though you've never seen the movie before, you and many other people would agree, if it's not done by Tarantino, it's Tarantino-esque.
Maybe if he
So
started with the post-war card tables first, people would have liked his ideas better. I don't know. I feel like that comparison was a little bit more
they couldn't get
stronger
over
than
the
teapots.
breast, right? Yeah, the teapot. He's always going to be the teapot guy. Well, I mean, I think his point was to take something that was, again, an everyday object that
Oh, and that's what I liked about the post-war stuff, because he talked about how the two tables were designed like in a different way. Like one kind of brought people together and increased the amount of like chaos in the environment, while the other gave people personal space and like places to actually place your cards down. So I actually feel like I got more out of that than the teapot one, because he had this human element involved in it.
Well, and because you could really see from the tables, even more so than the teapots, how much the slightest design changes can completely change the way that you interact with an object.
Yeah.
And that is something, again, that Henry Petroski goes into in great depth in his analysis of the design of everyday objects. And it's something that we don't really know that we take for granted, but it's what ergonomics is all about. And like the way that, if you've ever been in an old car, like have you ever driven an old car versus a new car? All the differences in there are changing the way that we drive. And yeah, just the way that they position the table legs, meaning that a woman wearing a skirt could only sit on two of the sides. I was like, wow, that's definitely something. And actually it made me think about, I wish I had a slide here. I'll talk about this some other week, but hostile architecture. Have you guys heard about this? It's like where they have park benches, but they put like spikes or extra armrests in there so that homeless people can't sleep on them.
Yep.
Yeah. So slight design changes can actually deter certain behaviors and control social activity. It's kind of sinister. But yeah, that's a good thought. Any other thoughts?
I'm going to try to articulate this correctly because it's kind of a complicated thing that I'm trying to say. But with the teapot and the way that like he was talking about things being metaphorical representations, I just kind of thought about the fact that I think in the reading, he prompts people to be like, what does this make you feel? Like, it's not just necessarily what do you want to use it for? But it's like, what does it prompt in you? Like what kind of, and somebody said that it was grandmotherly.
Yes.
And so it just like, I don't know, like it's hard to explain, like if you have two things that are the same side by side, like what inherently makes us feel like one thing is fancier or like more cherishable, or why, like what draws us to think that, I guess.
Well, and if I hope I'm understanding you correctly, but I'm going to expand on what I think you're saying. And as historians, we think we have to analyze things according to what we see and be objective and scientific and that kind of thing. But Prown is really emphasizing the role of emotion and how emotion actually dictates the way a lot of people relate to material culture objects. And sometimes that is being generated by the object itself. And so that should never be discounted, the way that an object can bring up in us different feelings that are generally associated within a culture, understood to be associated, like the roundness and the warmth, to be associated with certain feelings of nurturing and being taken care of. But again, he's totally speaking inside of a culture with all of its trappings to people who are also inside the same culture. And so that's what Csikszentmihalyi Hunt is talking about. Like, well, Brown is kind of a structuralist here, because he's taking for granted that we all know what he's talking about, and he's not realizing the role that language is playing, and you know, his own perspective is playing in providing him with these associations. So it may not be that these round shapes and these kind of warm liquids evoke the same kinds of emotional reactions in other people, but they certainly do in us. Or it's understood that there's a good chance that they would do that in us. And so I think that when we play show and tell later, you guys will actually be using language of emotion to describe your attachment to certain things more than you think. So I'm not warning you, I'm just saying, just pay attention because it's gonna happen. I mean, I brought my Princess Leia, so there you go. Okay, but any questions? Oh wait, hold on. Oh yeah, you guys are totally you guys are totally encouraged to use the chat box. By the way, if you want to, I can't see it when I'm looking at the slide right now, but I can see that there is something. There's like a flashing thing on my screen.
I'll need to look at that
But yeah,
later. The UIC Chicago,
Yeah.
which was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That sounds really interesting.
Oh yeah. Oh, we could. I am sorry that I took architecture out of the rotation of weeks that I use, you know, that in which I talk about material culture, because I could go on and on and on about architecture. Oh, and Elise, by the way, has strep throat, which is why she is typing instead of talking. I don't want her to be talking because I don't want her to injure her throat even further, but I'm glad that you're here, Elise, even though you should be sleeping. So yes, but yeah, all the way that things are designed, objects, we think that we are in control of objects, but that is not the case, which is a pretty good segue, I think, to the next thing we're going to talk about. Why we need things. Why do we need things? I need my things. I need things. And so when I read Csikszentmihalyi, it resonates on a level that it may not for any of you. And I feel like, you know, I feel like I'm in a meme somewhere where somebody is like, you know, I recognize
I tell
myself.
his point, it's on page 25 if people want to look at it, but he talks about the continuity of self, and it sounds a little bit close to what Friedel was talking about in the Bigsby house, because they bring up this example of the attorney with the trombone in his basement and all these like things. And I don't know, I thought that was kind of similar to how Friedel talks about the Bigsby house and how while they were a really modest, like working class family, they still had things that kind of show that they were trying to buy nicer things. I don't know how to put this, but it showed that they were trying to move up or make their life easier while still living in this kind of like simplistic house.
Right. So in other words, we need things because they stand in for what we want to present our identities as.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, I'm going to talk a bit more about Csikszentmihalyi in a second, but he's a psychologist. That's his background. In case you couldn't tell, in fact, he's been really involved in the whole new field of positive psychology that has kind of grown up over the past 10 years. If you've heard about that, how to be happy. It's a mystery, isn't it? But yeah, so why we need things on a psychological level. The overarching answer he gives is to order our minds. Because what happens when your minds have nothing to hold on to?
It wanders.
Yeah, you go crazy.
Yeah.
He quotes someone, I can't remember what exactly he says, but he like you like start thinking yourself to death.
Yes. Yes. I have a lot of stuff and I still do that. But yeah, so and so this whole idea about objects ordering our minds, it's you know, and then of course, like a good psychologist, at the end he throws in that maybe if we learned how to order our minds from the inside better, we wouldn't need so much stuff that's bad for the environment. It's like, thanks. I feel horrible now. Okay, now here's a quote for everybody to chew on. The thought that we are in control of our own minds is a cozy anthropocentric illusion. So what does he mean by that?
This might not be directly about it, but kind of like how he describes music and like using musical instruments as a way of expressing one's own mind. But like personally, I like play a bunch of instruments, and sometimes I feel like it's not so much like as expressive as like me trying to think about like what key is it in, what notes can I play. It's like grid, like it's very like structured, but at the same time it is kind of like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but
Well,
it feels like,
no, go ahead.
I mean, it's like I am, but I'm not in control of my mind at the same time. Like I'm having logical thoughts, but not. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it.
Oh, that small paragraph he threw in about music, it like made half my life make sense in a way that nothing else had before. And I was like, oh my God, that's why I need, you know, seeing how, especially for like adolescents, they use music as mood structurers, which, so basically music carries emotion in it that validates our own emotion, and therefore helps us kind of plug our own angst, I guess, into kind of larger structures, I guess. And it just okay, yeah, I will say his name again. But and so it's not just that the music itself, like listening to Bach, I mean, that's a total mathematical experience in which you feel like you listen to a Bach, you know, piece, and you feel like your mind has been scrubbed squeaky clean, and you know, you're all ready to go out and do somersaults now. But it's also, you know, if you listen to Beethoven, you know, why it is that music can enhance your mood or cheer you up or bring you down. It's like how I listen to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds when I'm depressed, because it validates that, and it just raises it up to a new plane where I feel like, yes, this depression was worth something. And so yeah, that was just a paragraph that also spoke to me. But objects do the same thing. And the anthropocentric illusion is that we are at the center of everything we do, and therefore everything that we do and think is controlled by the central, you know, the man behind the curtain. But that's not true. Yeah, so have fun with your illusion. And so I have another quote that's kind of building off of that from this same article. Our addiction to materialism is in large part due to a paradoxical need to transform the precariousness of consciousness into the solidity of things. So this is Csikszentmihalyi as a psychologist at the end, summing up that we all just, we need to be able to handle the precariousness of our consciousness in a more healthy way. Good luck, y'all. And if you figure it out, you can let me know. And I mean, some of the examples that he uses really bring this home. You know, people who maybe have some insecurities and choose to deal with those by getting fancy cars or giant rigged up trucks or extremely expensive watches. And if y'all fall into any of those categories, I'm not trying to criticize you or imply that you're insecure. I'm just saying that sometimes those objects are meant to compensate for things that our minds cannot handle on their own. And or it could be well, lots of other things. Luckily, I'm not in my house, and you can't see all the stuff behind me that I have that, you know, is at my house and personal. You can see all the crap that I have, but this is just my office. So, all right. So let's talk about this a bit more. Okay, he's Hungarian. That's why his name looks like this. Basically, his name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And this is going to be a video that you can watch later. Or he's all over YouTube. You can just YouTube it. Make sure you get the spelling right. I've been teaching this about this guy, like using his articles for years. And so I have practiced very hard how to spell his name, and I get it now. But I read this book that he wrote called Flow. So if you've heard of the psychology of flow, he's the guy responsible for that. It's like when you're so in the zone that you just cannot be distracted and you just perform at this utterly high level. Like those of you who maybe play an instrument or do a sport or something like that, maybe you've achieved that where you're like, you know, oh my God, I was just so in the zone there. I just, you know, blasted through those stanzas and got it all right. And I just wasn't even thinking about it. I was just doing it. So that's kind of the flow thing. So he is very interested in the structuring of consciousness and how it is that people act through that, I guess. Okay, so are we all cool on how to pronounce his name now? All right. Now, here's one of the questions that he poses at the beginning of the article that's going to come up throughout the rest of the semester when I'm talking about objects having agency. How do objects reproduce themselves? And I don't just mean like, I left my phone on the counter and the next day there were 2 phones. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I had an iPhone 5 last year and now I have an iPhone 6 this year, which I don't even know what number they're on. I don't do iPhones, but you know, that kind of reproduction. So can you think of any...
I think they talked about how items would become obsolete and we create newer ones to... Wait, didn't you already say this? I think I might have just... I think it's where like items become obsolete, so we make other ones to fix the kinks out of...
Well, it's not so much that objects become obsolete, it's that objects, like, you start detecting parts of objects that don't work anymore.
Yeah, so
or that don't meet our
remake 'em.
new needs, because our needs are evolving and these objects are evolving to keep up with those. But also the objects themselves, how is it that they're reproducing them? Like, how is it that they're kind of evolving, sometimes even without us? I mean, not technically without us, but without our ability to actually stand back and be in perfect control of this.
Well, makes me think of like the robot vacuums, how they learn how to like the mapping of your house on their own. So there is a sort of like, you could argue, it could be argued that like they kind of learn things and reproduce on their own because they can learn like a new house. Same with Siri, she like learns on her own.
Yeah, she is not allowed in my house. That's too freaky. But yes.
That material though, or like, would AI be like a material object, or is that...
I don't know. That's a really good question. It might be something a little bit beyond our conversation for today, but I mean, it's a good thing to at least keep in mind. Like, how much is technology evolving beyond the material part of material culture? Leaving the earthly trappings behind, you know? But I mean, everything that's apparently made by humans is material culture, but when you don't need humans anymore to make stuff, what's that gonna be, you know? Or even to program the things that make stuff. But yeah, like objects, they reproduce themselves because, you know, the materials available might change, therefore they can make a newer version of themselves with new materials that allow them to do more things, or to be cheaper, like Henry Ford coming in and making cars so cheap that his own employees could afford them for the first time in history. And you know, again, like with the iPhones and cars, the way that if you make a line of cars that has the most advanced safety features, is your next line of cars going to walk back those safety features? No, you can't do that anymore. You've already said, well, these are the best safety features. We're going to leave them out of the next more advanced line. So you're creating this need for technology in particular to keep building on itself, and therefore the design itself is almost determining what you can make next out of it, rather than your own kind of, this is what we think. And let me tell you, I was driving my aunt's car, and it has these advanced safety features where it beeps if you go over a line, but it also beeps if you get too close to something in the rear or in the front. And it also beeps if somebody doesn't have a seatbelt on. And it also beeps if the road conditions are kind of slick. So you can imagine driving a car with 5 people in it in slick road conditions last week, trying to avoid the shoulders on the road, because that's where all the slush was, therefore always going over the lines. How many beeps? That car was beeping at me. And I was like, this isn't safe. How is this keeping me safe? I want to scream. This is not a safety thing. But you know, for my aunt who's older, it certainly is. So yeah, I like going back to my old-fashioned car, which is less safe, but means that I have to be a more active driver and pay attention more. What do you know? How many of you drive stick shifts?
I used to.
Okay,
And I will
so
never
you
go
can.
back.
Anyone else?
Elise does.
Elise does. Okay, so two of you. Okay, so you understand that, like, when you're driving a stick shift, you can't like take a drink out of your Coke when you're going around a curve. You can't change your CD when you're doing in-town driving. You can't pick up your cell phone and take a look at it, because you need both hands.
Wait, who do you know who drives stick? Because I do all of those things. I could put on makeup while
Elise!
driving.
That is so not safe. I drive a stick, so.
Oh, my dad taught me when I was like 14. And he like made me drive in the city streets of Chicago. So like driving around here is like nothing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, it's still unsafe. Well, it's unsafe for you people with your automatic transmission to be using your phones and drinking your drinks too. So, but I'm just saying that the design of the car allows for certain levels of distraction, higher than what manual transmission does. So,
It's perfect for people with ADHD.
yes, I love driving manual because you feel like you're more in control of the car. And but when I'm in stop and go traffic, I prefer to drive my automatic, because otherwise my left leg gets numb from mashing the clutch. So I have one of each because I just do. I love material culture. Okay. So objects help us buy. And this is getting back, Xander already pointed out one of these 3 ways in which we need objects. So here are the 3 things that Csikszentmihalyi is outlining as the main reasons that objects are helpful to us. 1, they demonstrate the owner's purpose and status. 2, revealing the continuity of self over time. And 3, anchoring us in a social network. So I think that these were very clear when you were reading the article, because for one thing, there are subheadings saying these same things. So it's very easy for you to go back and review. But we will be talking about these more throughout the class period today. But basically, let's say a little bit about each one now. So Xander had already mentioned the Bigby house that was in the Friedel article, where this pioneer family had all of their material goods that you could see inside the house, but it showed them aspiring to be kind of in a slightly higher social class, you know, and that's something that we see around us all the time with our even more rampant materialism and our enslavement to mass culture, mass commercial culture. And so, but it's not a bad thing to own something that is a status symbol for you. I'll think of something, but does anyone have anything that you proudly think kind of demonstrates your purpose and status in life? Like it could be like
I
trophy.
have an example of this that's kind of silly, but I was just talking to my parents about this the other day because I went to visit their house. And there's like this distinct memory, like since I was a kid, my parents were lower class when I was younger, but now they're in, you know, the higher class, they're wealthy. And I remember the day that we got a garage fridge. And for me, that was like this little moment, this little like, oh, wow. You know, like my friends who like, they lived in 2-story houses, like they had a garage fridge where that's where their drinks went. And the moment that, and I was always so jealous that we didn't have one because, you know, we lived in apartments or we, you know, lived in, you know, townhomes and stuff. But when we got our first house and we got the garage fridge, I was just like, that's when I knew that you guys were like reaching success. And my mom was like, that's ridiculous. And I was like, am I wrong? I was like, but that's when they started, you know, my dad graduated college and started making good money. And now they have a garage fridge and they have a mini fridge. And I'm like, you're just completely like, my idea of success is how many fridges that I have in my house, which is ludicrous, but it's like, that's just an example that you're reminded.
But it's true. I mean, the amount of fridges in the average American household has increased. Some people even have wine fridges. I'm like, can I come over? The number of television sets used to be an indicator, you know, of that same thing. The number of bedrooms, bathrooms in houses. Bathrooms is a big one. Apparently now you have to have more bathrooms than bedrooms. Okay. But yeah, for me, it was when I could finally switch from IKEA furniture to Crate and Barrel furniture. Of course, I can't afford Crate and Barrel furniture anymore. But there was one time when I just remember being like, oh, I don't have to get IKEA furniture anymore. But I mean, I would say, like, here's an example from my house, like art, when I could actually buy art, you know, like by actual artists, not like people, like local artists. All right. So, you know, I'm not saying like I just bought a Picasso, but, you know, I have art on the wall that costs money, made by somebody that I know as an artist. And so to me, that just kind of felt like it's a status symbol in a way, because A, you're kind of in a certain economic bracket, and B, you're projecting to anyone who walks into your house that you're an appreciator of art, which makes you cultured, which is a good thing to be in our society. Any other examples?
Well, so I technically grew up in Dyersburg, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we moved there in 2010. So I was like 11. And immediately I realized like I never really considered us, you know, rich or anything. My parents had good jobs and whatnot, like middle class, right? And we lived in we've lived in brick houses like our whole life, and we lived in a brick house in Dyersburg. We're literally the only brick house in a 15-mile radius. And I just look around, like I see some wooden, I see some trailers. I'm like, are we rich? Because we're literally the only brick house in this area. There's a rich neighborhood, but they're like 30 minutes that way, and it's
But I think that's, I mean, brick is, I mean, just think about it. When you're reading like home descriptions on like Zillow or something, what are the things that they choose to tell you about that house? And the fact that it is brick is one of them, because that is seen as a good, that is seen as something to aspire to. So yeah, probably a lot more obvious than how many fridges.
And then nowadays I'm in an apartment and I have everything I own is hand me down from my mom's stuff. Like she's like upgraded her stuff and given me her old stuff. So I currently have a tiny kitchen TV that still makes like that little spark sound when you turn it on and off, and like static electricity. Like love it. Like success.
Flashback.
I know.
All right, good job. What about revealing the continuity of the self over time? Now, this one is a bit less obvious what would fit into this category. And anyone want to offer an example?
What was the question? I missed the first part.
We are on the second bullet point here,
Okay.
revealing the continuity of the self over time. So what kind of
Well-
objects do you have that might fit in this category?
The
This
tiny
might be like
TV.
counterintuitive, but like when you were saying the art thing, I have like usually have a bunch of art on my walls that I get from like thrift stores, but like I'm always changing my art around. Like, so it's like the thing that's continuous is my constant like shifting of what like my environment looks like to kind of, I don't know why. It'd be kind of cool to psychoanalyze myself concerning that, but like I don't know, that's like it's like a continuous thing for me. It's like constant change in a way.
But within the continuity of there is art.
Yeah, there is art and like things that I relate to, like a Charles Mingus bass player and like bass flowers, you know, just whatever I like for no
This-
reason really.
Sorry.
I have a
This-
drum part. Oh, you can go ahead. So you can go ahead.
Sorry. How I related to this particular point was like my great grandmother, if you compliment anything that she has, like you're like, oh, Nanny, I love your earrings. She says, well, you can have them when I die. And it's just like anything. I mean, like if you compliment her outfit, just anything. Well,
You say,
I'll
can I
make
get
sure
that
you
in writing?
Yeah. And so, you know, we kind of, it's like a family joke that we say that about, you know, little trivial things. But I took it as like art, like the objects that we leave behind are a continuation of you when you're no longer here. So like if one of, you know, if I were to pass, I'm sure that there's something that like my son would hold on to that would be a material thing that like withstands it, like it holds my legacy in it in a way.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at that, because I was thinking about the stuff that I've inherited. You know, I had a few deaths in the family a couple of years ago, and I got a lot of, you know, I got stuff. And that I would have put into like the third category as anchoring in a social, you know, it's like, I'm not going to get rid of this piece of furniture because it belonged to my dad, and before that, my grandfather. And, you know, or this is the ugliest lamp ever, but my mom held on to it for all these years, and therefore I think of my mom when I look at it. And so, but it's interesting that you're putting it in the second category as a continuation of yourself when you leave, because you know that famous saying, you can't take it with you. So, but I think a lot of people, like there's this really great line from My So-Called Life where the mom is remarking on the fact that the dad has way too many clothes in his closet. And she's like, oh, I get it. Whoever has the most shirts when they dies wins. And so I think a lot of people live their lives kind of accumulating against their own mortality. So we do have a sense that our objects can live beyond us, even, when we're dead. But you can't take it with you. But after that point, it becomes something for the people that we leave behind to have to deal with. We like to think that they're not going to chuck all of our stuff out. But I won't blame my daughter for doing that, because she's the only grandchild on both sides, and she's gonna inherit tons of crap from like 6 different people. I had heard that the younger generations were less attached to their things, unlike the boomers and the Gen Xers, of which I am one. So there's hope for you all.
I personally like collecting stuff. I have 2 memory boxes, and my mom was, I guess I inherited this from my mother because my mom's a hoarder. But I keep like little things, and if my dad or my mom or my grandparents want to give stuff away that they don't really need anymore, I'm usually the one to take them. I have collector's items that will probably be worth something about 30 years from now. I'm like just waiting.
Okay, well, if you're getting this stuff from people, it might be a bit of both, anchoring yourself in a social network, and kind of you are turning this into something that shows the continuity of your own self. I have a lot of stuff that I save that demonstrates how far I've come. Like, I saved all my notes from graduate school because I like to go back and be like, oh, wow, this is when I learned about this. And this is when I went here. This is when I heard this speaker. And I can see the process behind the end product of my degree. And, the degree itself would fit into this first category, of course. But all the stuff that got me there is part of the continuity of myself over time. And just to pick a really obvious example that y'all might relate to, does anyone have any old stuffed animals, old teddy bears that you've had from your childhood?
Right here to my left.
Bring it in. Let's see. This is it. Revealing the continuity of self over time.
I have an old drum set because I took drum lessons for like 6 years. So I have this full drum set in my room that is now collecting dust. I've not played it for years.
Yeah, but you won't let go of it, right?
Yeah, it's just sitting there. So
it reminds you that you once used to be able to do something.
Pretty much.
All right, y'all.
All right, we're about to begin the stuffed animal parade. Anyone else?
One of them is like, I have a lot of stuffed animals, but I got some really good ones. Okay, so I don't know, like you boys probably don't know what these are.
Oh, let's not use gendered language.
But so back when I was a kid, Webkins were a big thing. It was like an online games. You can collect these like little stuffed animals. This is like a German Shepherd, and there was a tag that would come with it, and you would type that code into the Webkins website, and you could like play games and stuff, take care of your animals, and then, of course you have like the physical object, and like they had like these little symbols on their feet. So I have like 20 of these.
I am today years old when I learned about Webkins.
I mean, they went out as like they were really popular when I was in elementary school. So I have like 20 of these.
All right then. And so this is something from your childhood that contributes to the continuity of yourself over time. And the memories that you have are, speak to who you are now. Like maybe you don't have the same kind of impetus to purchase those kinds of things today. Maybe you do, I don't know. But that you have another impetus, which is to save things that you purchased or got as a child that meant a certain thing to you then. The meaning might change slightly over time, but you still keep the objects to connect that to you. Anyone else?
Those were like $30 each. I couldn't afford them as a kid.
They're not cheap.
Yeah, I remember getting one that looked exactly like my dog when I was like 14. Sorry, I sound terrible.
No, it's okay, Elise.
I want to show you
I'm
guys my
encouraged to
records,
talk at
but
all.
like I'll go last.
Wait, so are we doing show and tell right now, or
No.
I also have.
I felt like a stuffed animal was a really good example of something that could represent
Okay.
the continuity of self over time. And I knew one of you would have one close by, and I was right.
I also
Oh.
have. I have my Stitch.
Oh, okay, all right. I can see how this could go on. Well,
I'm
you can
laying
bring them
on
out
Baby
during the
Yoda right
break.
now. I'm laying on a giant Baby Yoda.
Oh man. Well, you're gonna have to show me that during the break. Let's talk a bit more about anchoring us in a social network. So how can objects anchor us in a social network? And this could be like, photographs that you have. It could be board games that you play with friends and family. Like, what kinds of examples do you guys have?
I have a lot of like band t-shirts or like from concerts that I've been to and that kind of thing. And I think that that's a pretty obvious, like you can show your interests and that kind of feel with people. And I've had people, like I have a tattoo that's a album cover, and that people can visually just immediately see that you have a common interest, like you at least have one similar thing in your network, and it kind of anchors you in that.
Yeah, so like different kind of fandoms are social networks for which there is much material culture to nourish.
For me, it was kind of hard to think of the last two because, like, I mean, I came to America when I was 4 with my parents, so we're immigrants. So for this, I kind of thought of like the churches, like the Coptic churches, the buildings themselves kind of like anchored us, like me growing up with like other Egyptians, I guess, in Nashville. And they also seem to like reproduce themselves because when we first came, there was like 2 or 3 churches, and now there's like 12. It's just like growing. So that's my example.
I have never been to one of the Egyptian Coptic churches. I would love to go sometime. That would be really great. But yeah, and Csikszentmihalyi even mentions that for religious people, you've got buildings, you've got books, and you've got some statues and things like that that represent your belonging to that religious community, which is a social network. And of course, you've got the immigrant network on top of that as well that's tied in. Any other examples?
I have lots and lots of posters. Ones I've inherited and ones I've bought about all my fandoms. So,
Oh, I did too.
including like Star Wars,
still have them.
Lord of the Rings, Marvel. I have a lot of band posters.
I
that my
have
mom
like
had.
U2 posters from 1989. Yep.
Oh, I have an Outsiders poster from whenever that movie came out. My mom kept it for like,
That
years.
was like 84, 86.
Yeah, like something like that. So she
Nicole,
kept
Playboy.
that and gave it to moi. So I have it. It's only ripped like at this, like the corners and stuff. Like it's in good condition. Besides that, and it has all my favorite hot guys on it. So,
Oh my God, like Tom Cruise and Rob Lowe. Holy crap.
And Emilio Estevez. Like,
See Thomas Howell, who did nothing after that. Yeah.
Can
Okay.
you guys hear a blender right now?
Blender?
Yeah.
No. Is that your
Okay.
example of material culture?
Oh no, there's just a blender that's super loud happening right now, and I was wondering if you guys could hear it.
No. Are you making margaritas?
No.
Is
My
it your
mom's actually.
blender?
Yeah, my mom's making a birthday cake for one of our cousins right now. It's like a strawberry.
Totally
cake.
loud. Yeah. We will totally endure a distraction if it means a cake is being made. All right. Okay. We have 3 minutes until break. During the break, which is going to be 10 minutes long, you guys need to go find something for show and tell.
just
And
like,
this is the summary of Csikszentmihalyi's article, this particular paragraph on page 23. where he talks about these 3 different ways that we've just been discussing. But it's in the PowerPoint now in case you want it. When we come back, we're gonna watch this video, this TED Ed video about why we're so attached to our things. And then we're gonna do show and tell. So we're gonna come back at 10 minutes past 4 o'clock and have your show and tell item ready and realize you're gonna be answering these questions about your object. So pick something good that
So
you
we
can
can only
say
pick
something
one
about.
thing.
What?
You can only pick one thing.
Oh my God, only one thing.
Does
All
anyone
right.
here like cats?
So many choices.
Yeah, I was
What?
gonna ask if we could show our cat.
You
Like
can
I-
show your cat. I mean, I'm going to be hanging out here for the next 10 minutes. It's break time. Show me your cats.
Is that a
Okay,
material
I'll be right
object?
back. Her
Show
name
me
is
your stuffed animals. I know you've got them. I know more people than Abby have got them.
her name is Daenerys, as a side note, which is unfortunate now.
Oh,
Since,
Her name is what?
but
Did you say Daenerys?
Oh, Daenerys. Oh, yeah. That's totally
So
fine.
Daenerys? I'm not even sure. Okay, I have so many things.
Oh,
Cute.
lift her up higher. Higher.
I saw like her face for like a split second.
Bring her
Hello.
up higher. Where-
she is a Siamese. She's a Laperm, so she is a mixture of a Siamese cat and a fluffier cat. She has bright blue eyes,
So cute.
and she is super. She has a saddle on her
Making me
back.
sneeze through the camera.
If you see the, if you see that little black spot, it's called a saddle. It's on her back. It's right
Oh, yeah.
here.
I want a cat so bad.
And yeah, she does not like being picked up, which is why she's giving me the evil eyes and shaking her tail.
Yeah.
But
Another Zoom class. Xander.
I would get a cat, but it's $300 for the deposit, and then it's $30 every month. And I'm
Oh,
like,
you mean like in your apartment?
yeah, and I'm poor.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. The pet deposits can be pretty steep and a real disincentive. Yeah.
guess I should look for my material item real quick. I'll be right back.
I have so much stuff. Okay, I do have these. So I inherited these because it's just my mom giving away her
What's
stuff.
the
I
air
have-
quotes for? What do you
Because,
mean?
like,
You
she's
didn't
not
really
dead.
inherit them?
Like my mom's not dead, so it's not really like.
Oh,
inheriting.
no, you can inherit something when the person's still alive. They
Okay,
can
then I
bequeath it
inherited
to
these.
you.
I've inherited a lot of stuff from my mother,
Okay.
but these are like original, like Pinky and the Brain doll.
Oh my God, Narf.
And like, if you see the date on their tags, it says 1995.
Oh yeah, I used to watch Animaniacs when it came out, and then they did a reboot just last fall.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I watched it, and
Maybe it's more from my generation.
I grew up watching all the old stuff. I didn't watch like when people talk about like their shows from like my time and stuff. Wow, that is a big Baby Yoda.
Want so bad. I just want to bury my
At
face. in that
Costco
piece
for
of cake.
20 bucks.
Where?
Costco. Look
Oh
at
my
it.
God, I don't shop at. I will now have to shop at Costco.
I have a
That is amazing.
thank you.
What is the coolest thing I own?
I have these 2 Paramount Records posters in my
Very
room.
nice.
They're like prints.
Yeah, those
from-
are super vintage cool.
Yeah. I like music. I don't know if
Yeah,
anyone
with your 900 records, I figured.
yeah. Only one record, huh?
I have more than one record. What are you talking about?
No, because you said only one thing.
Oh, only one thing.
I was
Well, you
thinking
can point to your collection, but yeah, you can't hold it all up. So you
my
have-
collection is like very scattered around my apartment, but I have a record cutting lathe from the 1930s.
Oh wow, that's neat.
Sorry, I'm eating raspberries.
That's fine. Y'all can totally eat during this class. I think I lost some people. You know, I was at Walgreens and they had the kind of tiny sized but they look just like that of the Baby Yoda and one of the other characters. And I was with my daughter,
Expensive.
and she was begging for me to buy her a stuffed animal, and I was trying to explain, no, we don't need to buy a stuffed animal every time we go to Walgreens. So that meant that I could not buy myself a Baby Yoda after having just told her that. And every time I've been going back to Walgreens, I'm like, do they have it? Do they have it? And they have not. And I'm
those
just
are
so
super
like, damn
good.
it, I should have bought it anyway. And then like, hey kid, when you have your own salary, you can buy your own stuffed animals.
You should go on eBay and see how much those are going for right now. This one is like $300, but you can go to Costco and buy it.
Wow, that sounds. I have my Baby Yoda is. It's from Disney World, and it's like a plush Disney World. It's before like a bunch of the stuff came out. And if you lift up its robe, it's got like underwear on.
Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and,
this
but
one's
it's a little bit too small to be very huggable, and it's got pretty sharp claws. Other than that, it's totally plush. It doesn't have like the plastic head or anything.
Yeah.
That just see, when we're talking about designs begging certain actions from people and creating certain behaviors in people, that thing makes you want to just use all four appendages and squeeze it from every direction.
Oh yeah, it's so soft too.
If I had that though, my daughter would frickin' steal it and
I
be
use
all
it.
over it.
I use a pillow. I use it as a pillow. Like, not kidding.
Yeah.
I was sitting here like this, listening to Zoom.
I have a BB-8 that's about this big and it's plushy, and I always use it as a pillow when I'm on the couch watching Clone Wars and stuff.
Oh, I actually have something for you. My mom makes stickers, and I had her make you one.
Oh wow!
Here, 1 second.
I don't think they're gonna. They don't really fit in the material culture because they're rocks.
Where is it?
They're nature made. Like, it's not like. Oh wait, the Colosseum doesn't count. It's like, oh, okay.
He's just hovering.
Aww,
They don't even.
my
Know.
dad!
She also made these too.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's neat. I love stickers.
Yeah.
I love stickers too. Oh gosh.
I'm gonna grab my lathe and get it ready.
More collector's items that I will just be keeping for 30 years.
I want to get rid of all my stuff, but my parents just came and like I was trying to talk to my mom about it, and she like freaked out a little bit.
I have an original Woody doll
Oh my goodness.
from, let's see the date on this, buddy. 2001. Okay, so it was the second movie.
I was like, yeah.
Or 2002.
I can't remember when the first one came out, but it was.
First one was
1995.
93.
I was like, it was in the 90s.
Wait, 93? I did not realize it was that old.
93 is when the first one came out.
I remember it was, there was a real big to do about it. And it was like, wow, this is like the next thing in animation. And it was also a good movie, you know, which was.
I mean, it had
really
Tom Hanks in it. It was a winner.
It was, but I mean, it was a good movie. Like it had
I love
heart, and so did all of the sequels.
So
So yeah,
he still talks.
I like to play guitar.
there's a snake in my boot.
He says it at one point. I don't know. But yep, originally like, he's got a few
Great.
marks on him, but he's in good condition, I think. Woody doll. I have a Buzz Lightyear also, but his batteries have been out for like 10 years, so he does not speak.
Great.
I know I'm a Disney nerd. I have so much Disney stuff.
Well, since between my childhood and my adulthood, Disney bought all the franchises that I loved. So now I'm a Disney nerd without meaning to be. They bought the Muppets, they bought Star Wars, they bought Indiana Jones, they bought
They
Pixar.
bought Indiana Jones? I didn't know they bought Paramount. I didn't know
They
Paramount.
bought
was-
everything that I have loved.
Okay.
They
Well,
honestly have a monopoly almost. I wonder if they're going to get busted at any point if they buy anything else.
all they gotta
They've
do
been
is buy
criticized
one.
for it for decades.
I
So.
love
know.
Indiana Jones. I have original Indiana Jones posters.
I
Yeah,
love
yeah, me
Harrison
too.
Ford. Harrison Ford is
Here's my lathe.
yes.
Oh wow, it looks like a record player.
Yeah, but it cuts records. So like, here, wait. You could see.
So do you program it so that it'll cut different records? You're on mute.
Sorry. So I can cut a 33 and a 78.
Oh, okay. Wow. But I mean, can you cut any record?
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. I've never seen one of those work.
It's kind of works. I'm fixing it right now. I'm growing little crystals so that I can use it to cut them.
Ah.
There's a whole forum on the internet of like really big nerds who are into this stuff. And I am,
Oh yeah. The internet allows you to find all your people.
yes, it does. It really does.
There's light shining off my laptop and it's terrible.
I see that, Xander. Yeah, I had to pull the shade down in my office or else
I do not have shades here, so I'm just gonna have to.
Can you like maybe angle yourself slightly differently? Or are you just gonna
That's
blow
what I'm
out this
trying to.
ball?
Gotta do
Oh,
something.
that's better. That's much,
That's a
much
lot
better.
better.
Yeah, much better. Doesn't hurt to look at you now.
So I remember
I always-
talking about this, or
I
what
always
you're gonna
have
say.
like reflections off my glasses that are weird.
Yeah. But my grandpa, he carved a wooden thing, so I'm technically they're similar though. I'm doubling up a tiny bit, but here's a truck. The wheels work still, over 20 years old, and it has this little thing to. And then the other one is a dump truck right here.
Oh, nice. Well, that's great. Now you have something you can pass down to the next generation.
Yeah.
All right. I think I don't know if everyone's back yet. So if you are back and watching, if you could turn your video screen on, please, so I can see your faces and know that you're participating.
I have one question.
Yes, before we get started again, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a really cool item, but they're technically like nature made. Does that count?
Well, remember at the very beginning of the semester when we were defining material culture and we were talking about how even natural things that have been shaped by people can count as material culture because it's the interaction between you and that thing that brings its value and its purpose. So that's possible. Okay, now keep your stuff on standby because we are going to watch a short video. So we've already been thinking and talking about why we need things. So keep all those reasons in mind. But now we're going to also look at why we're so attached to our things, which has been coming out very clearly in this discussion today. And no matter what Csikszentmihalyi says, it might be a psychological weakness, but whatever, you're in good company because I feel extremely attached to all of my stuff. As a deep, deep introvert, I find things much more comforting than people. So that's my perspective. But anyway, so I'm gonna bring up this video. I'm going to share my screen. I have to pause the recording because YouTube will not let me post a video that has a video shown within it because of copyright. So if you watch the recording later, it's just not going to have the next 5 minutes in it. Okay. So for the sake of the recording, I just put people into breakout rooms where they're going to be discussing with their classmates the 3 questions from the Csikszentmihalyi article about their own show and tell objects. Those 3 questions being, 1, is it an object of power? 2, does it help maintain continuity of the self? And 3, is it evidence of relationships or social networks? So I'm going to leave them in there for a few minutes and then we'll all reconvene and discuss.
I'm sorry.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So I would like to give, since we're a pretty small group, so I would like to give everyone a chance to share, since it is show and tell. So just make sure that it's when your turn to share, you kind of keep it short and sweet. And so what I would like for you to do is show everybody, now that you've had a chance to talk about it, everybody your object, and tell me which one of those categories you think it best represents, and a little bit of why. And I, as promised, I will show you. All right, can you see those? So here's my original Leia, Princess Leia from in the Bespin Cloud City outfit, and R2-D2, and these survived the purge, which was my mother selling all of my Star Wars toys at garage sales in the 80s, because I didn't realize that at the time I was just playing with them and I hid them in the back of a drawer and forgot that they were there. And so years later I found them and was like, yes, I still have some original Star Wars figures. So these maintain continuity of self because they remind me of something I've loved since childhood. But they're also a bit of an object of power because these things give you status within the fandom. And also, if I wanted to sell them, I could get some money from them. So that makes them count kind of as a bit of an object of power in that way. Never going to do that, of course. And well, never say never. Can't take it with you, right? My poor child. You should all have more than one child so they're not like doomed to inherit all of the stuff. Okay, so we are going to go in order of what I see on my screen in terms of people's tiles, which is probably not the same as yours, so you don't know. So Noah, it's you. You're first.
I have a autographed Derrick Henry card. I actually got it probably like 5 months ago. I'm not sure how many months ago, but like I saw Derrick Henry had the ability to get 2,000 yards. So I'd say like it's not necessarily a sense of power to like everybody, but it's an autographed card, so it has like a status something to it. And I'd say it maintains continuity because like when Chris Johnson got his 2,000-yard season when I was in middle school or whatever, I got a autographed card and like I collected cards back then, so this was like kind of a continuity of that. And it's evidence of a relationship with like the card because it's a Tennessee Titans card, and like I'm from Tennessee, I'm a fan of the team, so it's a relationship in that form.
All right, that's cool. So you have a number of different connections and you were able to put them in those different categories. All right, thank you. Cole, you're next.
So it's a bit hard to choose only one thing here. Before class, I had pulled out an entire like stack of these of my collection of collector's editions, but picking one out of them. These are all from these are all from the same series, but the Legend of Heroes Trails series. But the one I picked in particular was Trails in the Sky, which is backwards. Thank you, Zoom. I think this would show continuity of the self. I mean, it's a very near and dear series to me. It took a decent amount of effort to hunt down these. And it's just something that I've taken a lot of lessons from myself over the years. It could also be evidence of relationships because of things like, the fandom. I've met friends through this. I've bonded with existing friends over it. Yeah.
Oh, you're muted, by the way, again.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to Cole. And next is Behi.
Well, it's okay. So I picked my object because I think it fit into all three categories the best, especially with the power, like the dominance thing, like the erotic energy, which I never had thought of. But it's gonna move some stuff.
That's very proud of you.
Oh, pride.
Oh, man.
This is how I compensate for my lack of vital sexual energy. Just kidding.
Is that a joke among bassists?
You said
Wait,
what?
you're not going to play it?
I mean, I could, but like
couple. Because the thing, it has to be, sensory. Let's have a bit more sensory experience here.
Let's do like a brief. It might not be in tune.
You can kind of hear it, kind of not.
Yeah.
It's cutting out a little bit.
All right. Very sweet.
Thank you. Yeah. But yeah, it's a big object, so I thought it was like my equivalent of having a big truck. But also, the second was continuity of self. I've been playing since I was in 4th grade, so very constant. And the relationships being, I was in like a classical orchestra for 9 years, so you play with a whole bunch of people, so it showed kind of like that social relationship with the people.
Yeah, like you definitely fit into the band, and it was a community, and so you can't play that without thinking about some of that atmosphere.
You can't play an upright bass alone, really.
It's not really a solo instrument. I mean, you get a bass solo, but only within the context of a larger song.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. Elise, I don't want to make you talk, but I'm very much enjoying the Baby Yoda. But did you want to try to tell us about the lab?
Yeah, so I have a record cutting lathe here. Give me 1 second. So I can cut records with this thingy, like straight to vinyl. It's from like the 1930s, 1940s. You could kind of tell with like the design and like these little like pieces. It's a tube amp as well, but it fits into the parts because I've been collecting records since I was a kid. I don't know what else. Sorry, my voice is going in and out.
That's okay. You don't have to go on.
But it's cool, and there's Baby Yoda.
Well, that's the mic drop moment. There's Baby Yoda. Nothing needs to follow that. Like seriously. Okay. Thanks, Elise. Abby, you're up next.
Okay. So I had the hardest time trying to choose because I have such cool things, but I was trying to see like what would answer these questions, and I figured that my dance heels that I danced in ballroom dancing with, these are my very first pair. I do not use these anymore because they are worn down to these souls. And so these are like kind of considered power objects because I cannot dance ballroom dancing without these. Like in theory, sure, but this is what really sells the aesthetic. And, the continuity of self, I've been dancing now for about 3 years. And before that, I've always been pretty active and whatnot. But I've always loved dancing deep down. So I'm glad I could continue it with these. And relationships, I have formed many relationships since dancing. And they're very special to me. Very big part of my life now. And I love every minute, every penny that I spend because it's not very cheap, but
Right.
I love it. So these are very red and very like uncomfortable now, but
Well,
I've upgraded.
red is a power color. And getting back to the first question, you know, those are dance, like a lot of people go ballroom dancing, but to actually own specific ballroom dancing shoes is a signal to other people that I take this very seriously and I have a certain level of expertise. So it does kind of convey that message that makes it a status symbol within that context as well. And they're very nice. I am very proud of all of you guys for trying to answer all 3 questions with your object. You don't have to, in case you have an object that you feel like is more 1 or 2 categories than the other. But if you want to try to extract all 3 kinds of things from your object, that's fine too. I just didn't want you to all feel like you had to do that. But so far you've been all making it make sense. So that's good. Xander, you are next.
Okay. So I picked my grandpa's wood carvings. I have a couple here, but I'm just going to show off this one's a dump truck. I might actually move my laptop back so you can get a better view of this.
Yes.
We'll still work even over 20 years later. But I'd say it fulfills 2 categories really well, that being continuity of self and evidence of personal relationships, because I feel like obviously I was really close to my grandpa, and continuity of self, I feel like he's given he always gave us stuff like his grandkids stuff like over the years, so it's kind of we can kind of use that as kind of like memories, like as different time periods. I don't really think the object of power really applies to it, but I feel like the other 2 points do.
Yeah, definitely. All right, great. Seth, you are next.
All right, so my object, which is gonna be really hard to see, is this little YMCA medal I got when I was younger. Yeah, it's super hard to see because it's literally smaller than the palm of my hand.
Yeah.
I got this when I signed up for a run in 2010, and we ran around the I think it was the National Music Hall of Fame or Music City Hall of Fame Stadium. I don't know. We ran around something, and I think it really fulfills evidence of relationships the best because my whole family came out and watched me. I had my friends and I running, and some of those friends that I ran with, we've been friends for like 10, 20 years now. So it really shows how these relationships have formed.
And also, I mean, a medal itself is meant to show a certain kind of status or at least level of achievement. So you could actually talk about it like that too. Yeah. Oh, somebody actually raised a hand the way that Zoom wants you to. Okay, Behi, what's up? No, you're on Zoom. You're on mute. Of course, you're all on Zoom.
Okay, so that just blew my mind because I went to Hume Fog downtown, and I remember when people were running. So I probably saw you running when I was leaving school or something.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay, small world.
Yeah, for real.
Well, see how objects can totally bring up memories we didn't even know we had, but how the object makes more sense when we all tell about why we're attached to it. So cute. Shayla, you were next.
Okay, so my object, it's a Japanese tamari ball. They're these handmade, really intricate. They're made out of like lace or not lace, yarn and string and all that. And there's a little, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's like a little bell in the middle. And my grandmother gave this to me about 5.5 years ago, when my fiance was diagnosed with cancer. And this lady hand makes these. And the entire time that she makes one, she wishes, it's not really praying because she's Japanese, but she like wishes good fortune and like health and wellness and all that stuff on the person that she is. Yeah. And then like in the very center of it's like a bell inside of a plastic ball, and then she puts your name on a little piece of paper and like sticks it in there. And then the entire time that she's doing this intricate like weaving, she thinks about you. So this is one of my favorite, and they're really cool. You can look them up on the internet, and there's like tons of amazing designs, but this is the one that my grandmother chose for me because purple is like our color. So it definitely is evidence of relationships for sure. But then I think it's also like a continuity of self, because my grandmother and I have been really close since I was young, since I was a little girl, and we've always kind of shared these little like quips and quirks with each other, and like sharing a common, it's like purple isn't my favorite color, but it's like it's mine and my grandma's color, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fine.
Now, I think it's interesting to compare just for a second what your grandma gave you and what Xander's grandfather gave him, because like if you look at the toy truck, obviously you can't guess all of the specific memories that Xander has and his relationship with his grandfather, but you can pretty much tell what you do with the truck. And, you know, he made it, he gave it to small children, and you can kind of picture how they would play with it. So that is the kind of object that you can glean more from just looking at it. But like the ball that you just showed, Shayla, that's the kind of thing where, I mean, if I brought it to class and asked you guys and nobody knew what it was to analyze it, I don't think people would, you can't tell from just the object itself, its significance in terms of being a conveyor of good prayers and thoughts and, you know, good wishes to somebody sick. That's like a very big part of that object's, you know, purpose, but it's not obvious in the physical description of the object. And so, you know, think about that too when you all are looking at what objects you have. Now, granted, we can see a double bass and we know how you use it. We may not know like your relationships with your fellow orchestral members, but you can kind of understand the significance of it from the object itself. But like, you know, the football card, you know, you can tell it's a football card, but the significance comes from something outside of the object, which is the achievement of that particular player. So think about your objects and like, you know, how much do they intrinsically reveal and how much do you have to fill in? It's like the difference between, you know, a painting by Caravaggio versus a painting by Mark Rothko. I mean, what makes it art? Does it speak for itself, or do you really need to have some extra stuff in so people realize how significant it is? So it's just interesting. You made me think about that. Okay, thank you, Shayla. Tim, you are next.
All right. So my object is a shaving kit. It's this brush and then like this cup to put shaving butter in or cream. They use it at like barbershops and stuff. Nobody really uses them anymore. My wife got it for me for Christmas this past year because I don't know, I've just always wanted one. And I said before in the class, but I've always wanted to use like a straight razor to shave, but I'm scared to death to slice my throat open. So I don't trust myself usually with just regular razors. So hopefully I'll get there one day. But I would say that it's an object of power in the sense that with the clean shave, I just feel better about myself, I guess, and you just feel more. Um, I don't know how to like motivated, I guess. Like when I have like just stubble or like I remember in June I didn't shave for 2 weeks because I felt really weak. I had COVID, And so like I just felt homeless for those 2 weeks. And so when I finally got to shave, I was like, yes, this is what it is like. This is great. So it's kind of weird, but and also I'd say that it resembles relationships because when I use that, I think about my wife because she gave that to me. It's a minute gift to some people, but to me, it's something I cherish. I don't use it as often as I'd like, just because it's more time consuming to put it in the cup, spread it on your face. Most of the time, I just use like the cheap Barbasol and stuff. So it's more decoration than anything. And then as well, I'd say the continuity would be like, I mean, I'll be shaving until I can't move my hands anymore when I get old. So I guess it'll continually. I guess it'll never get old to me. Um, so it'll always be something that's there.
Well, going back to its being an object of power, I have to say that those things are pretty classy. You know, they do take more time, they take more care, they take more skill, and they take more money. And those things make the man shaved with one of those a bit classier than the Barbasol and plastic razor. No offense to anyone ever. I'm so glad I don't have to shave my face. But yeah, I lived with someone who tried that and got a strop and everything, and their reaction was it wasn't as close of a shave as they were hoping. And I just put that under skill and maybe not knowing how to sharpen the blade well enough either. But they wanted it so bad because they thought it would be so cool and that they would feel like Frank Sinatra or something like that.
I do. So I shave my head because
Yeah,
I'm
see that?
balding already at 24. So I think it's just better to go ahead and embrace that I'm going to be bald forever. But one time I tried to shave my head with a safety razor because I use a regular razor, and I had like so many cuts on the back of my head and I couldn't shave it for like weeks because you gotta have to angle it at like a 30-degree angle.
Yeah,
It's like really.
Your head is, you don't realize how lumpy a head is until you shave it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got my head
How
shaved when I
amazing it
was
feels.
20, and I
Yeah.
just remember praying that my head wasn't a funky shape underneath all of my hair. Because
I had short hair. I probably had my hair was as short as Tim's at one point, and I realized like my back of my head is a little flatter than other heads, and I was just like, well, I'm going to grow this out as soon as possible. I never cut it again. It was a one-time thing. I'm glad.
I recommend it for everyone because it feels amazing, less upkeep, and it's a way to make up for my homeless beard. How homeless my beard can get.
Okay, not all beards make you look homeless, but
who's the scraggliest? Yeah,
But,
see what you did, Tim? Every other man is like,
yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, I know. I noticed there were a lot of
but
people
it is funny
doing this
though.
when you were talking about. I just feel like more presentable when I.
Yeah, it's funny because my hair is actually usually like a little bit shorter, but it's just during COVID, I'm lazy. Like I've gotten lazier when it comes to like
everybody's allowed to let it slip
shaping
during
up my
COVID.
beard and like cutting my hair. Usually my hair is like a little bit shorter. Like I usually have close to like a buzz cut. But since COVID has happened, I haven't shaved. I haven't like done anything. I just don't care because I'm not going anywhere most of the time.
I made the mistake of cutting my own bangs, but I forgot I had a widow's peak, and so this side is higher than this side. And so if I just press it down, it looks even.
That's what happens whenever I try to trim my daughter's bangs. It's never, but she doesn't care because she's 9. But no, I do not cut my own hair. I do not shave my own head. I do not shave my own face. I do not know how you all do it. Of course, shave my legs. That's not that easy either. So you all should try that. I mean, it's totally fun.
It's so much fun.
Not the shaving part, but like
What
Baby
is that?
said,
After you put some
I remember
lotion
that.
on.
Yeah, I remember not having to use shampoo for the first time in my life. That didn't last very long. Oh my God, look what you did, Tim. You made us all talk about like our hair, and then we all talked about what slobs we are.
It's all vital erotic energy, though.
I cut my bangs too a few days ago, and then my flat iron broke.
It's just It's unfortunate, but I had to wait till they grow out a little bit more before I try again.
Well, no, my flat iron broke and my hair is extremely curly. Like it's wet right now, but my hair is like Shirley Temple curly.
Do you think you have curls?
Yeah,
Like,
I don't get that. I don't get. Anyway, okay. I'm gonna tamp down this for a second because I'm gonna pop us back to the PowerPoint to now keep these objects in mind. We're gonna revisit them in a moment. I'm gonna share and get back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so that was the video, and those were our show and tell questions. And okay, so now let's talk about analyzing everyday objects, because some of the objects that you showed are everyday objects. Like a shaving kit is an everyday object, though maybe not the way that you use it, Tim, but it could be. Whereas like a valuable sports collectible card is not really an everyday object anymore, although it started life as one perhaps. And so there, with the kinds of goods that we generally traffic in these days, it's harder to tell what's an everyday object because some things could be part of our everydays. But also everyday objects meaning like a mug, you know, and a pencil, like that kind of stuff. So let's think about that for a second. And so these questions, I'm going to let you all discuss these in breakout rooms. We probably won't have time to discuss them as a whole group afterwards. I think the breakout rooms are going to be randomly assigned, so you might not be with the same people, but I am going to just go through these questions, keep them in mind. These are based on the kinds of questions that come from your reading for today by Henry Petroski about everyday objects. And that is for one thing, the form versus function thing that we're going to talk about in a bit. So how would you describe the form of your object? How would you describe its function? And then, you know, you've always heard form follows function. And Petroski is saying, nope, that's not always the case. So which do you think came first? Is it more meant to be functional as in produce things? Or is it meant to be more kind of like the form itself is where you derive the most of your enjoyment and its use from? So I'm going to pop you back in breakout rooms and let you guys discuss those questions. Okay, so do you know what you're going to be discussing? What's its form? What's its function? Which came first?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. it seems like you guys were in the same groups as before. Is that true?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
we were at least. Yeah.
I guess it remembers that for each Zoom session that you have. All right. And we lost Kelsey a while ago, actually. She went off to find something and never came back. That happens a lot in Zoom.
Sorry, please excuse me. I'm eating a whole charcuterie board.
I couldn't even see it. I was like, what are you talking about? Charcuterie board. That's what I had for like dinner yesterday. Totally. Okay. All right. I'm sorry if that wasn't a lot of time, but I'm hoping that I can take maybe 2 or 3 examples because we don't have time to go over all of the examples. Or you can just talk about the kinds of conversations you had within your group about form versus function and how it may be exemplified through one of your objects. So do I have a volunteer?
I guess like mine would be completely like form over function, because the function, I guess you could take it literally and be like, oh, it's a toy, you play with the wheels, but it's mainly at this point like all about its form, like its nostalgic value. It's basically a vessel for feels. That's how I would define this item now. It doesn't really have like a actual physical function though.
Yeah, that's the thing about toys is, you know, the question about function and how you define that. Is the function of that dump truck really meant to dump things? No. Is it meant to roll? Yes. But it's meant to be played with. That is its function. So in that sense, it is very functional, right? It's not like one of those toys you buy for your kid, but don't let them use because it's too expensive and it has to sit on a shelf. So at least it wasn't like that. The Abby is demonstrating the function of a stitch.
Yeah.
A stitch?
It's meant to be hugged.
Stitch? Okay, that's one of those cartoons that I only saw like once 20 years ago. Anyway,
I've seen that movie so many times.
It didn't even come out 20 years ago. It came out 15 years ago.
Wait,
There's a record player in it. So
okay, a long time ago.
2000
Anyway, but yeah, that my point is that like, what is the function of this?
You hug it.
This at least was functional in that we played with it a lot. Now, did we play with it the way it was meant to be played with? Yes. Did we play with it a different way? Yes. And now how do I play with it? Well, I'm not telling. Anyway, but can I have another volunteer?
I'll go because mine's kind of like a special case almost.
Yes.
Because it's a metals, and metals like form and function kind of matter because like the form, because like each metal is kind of different based on the event. So the one metal could be different from another. So the form kind of matters, and also like the function because it's an award and the awards are specific to the event that you won. So kind of fits both.
Yes. Now with yours, Seth, which do you think came first? The function or the form?
The function 100%, because humans are super competitive and 100% would always try to like outdo each other. So it may not have been a medal at first, but there was definitely some kind of prize at the end of whatever games they had.
Yeah.
We were talking about how just like any like so many different awards look different, like even with like Oscars and Grammys and Tonys and like all these things are different, but they all have the same like inherent function to them. And we know that they do because we've been doing that since like human competition first.
Yeah, it's like the need to have a medal or a trophy. And then after that, very secondary to that is, well, it has to look different from all these other ones, you know. So the form is definitely secondary. I agree with you guys. Good. How about one more volunteer?
Well, I liked Cole's example of the video game. Sorry to bring you into this, Cole, but the form and function of like the actual like programming aspect of it, like the coding and like programming of what the video game is going to look like as to what came first there, like whether it was like the form. So I was thinking it's like kind of a back and forth between form and function, creatively speaking, not like the video game as a material object, but as like the world in the video game.
Yeah. Yeah, video games are a little bit harder to categorize and to describe because you have the physical object itself, but then you have the virtual reality encased within. And I'm sure you could all tell that, like the Brown and Friedel articles, the Csikszentmihalyi article is like 89, 90. So before the advent of a largely digital world. And so therefore, not really delving into those kinds of questions. And I would love to know how he would do that now. And I guess if I spent enough hours on YouTube, I might be able to find that out. So, okay, good. So now that we're thinking about form and function, let's go back to the PowerPoint and talk about everyday objects and the readings that you did for today, which are both by Henry Petroski. And some of you may have heard of him before, some of you may have looked him up, but he's a professor at Duke, and he's a civil engineer. He also teaches like history courses now, and you can tell that he understands historical research. But his background, he's an engineer, and these are only 4 examples of his books. He's super prolific, and a lot of his other books are like, he wrote a book called To Engineer is Human, and a lot about design, industrial design, and how objects fail. And a lot of his more recent work is actually about the failure of the American infrastructure. And as a civil engineer, you can imagine that his interest in roads and bridges is pretty big. And the crumbling of those things would be of great import to an engineer whose interest is in design and failure. So yeah, it's not that he just picks everyday objects and writes object bios about them. This is only a snippet of his work. He's largely occupied with engineering design. So the evolution of useful things, that's the book that you all read from. The chapter How the Fork Got Its Tines comes from that. There's also a chapter about the evolution of the paperclip, which I read, which was really fun, which is why there's a paperclip on the front cover. And the pencil, he wrote an entire book about the pencil. And I love that idea because a pencil is so ubiquitous that it passes beneath most people's notice in terms of a material culture object that performs an important function. And it seems so simple that we're like, well, what's there to tell? Well, apparently a lot. I haven't read this book yet. I just got it as a gift though, so I can't wait. The book on the bookshelf, this book is a lot of fun. And I did, Tim, you may not remember it, Tim, but you read a couple chapters from this book in the history of the book class that you took.
I think I remember.
You do, see? I knew you'd remember. It also has the best title of a book, The Book on the Bookshelf. Get it? It's about the evolution of the bookshelf. And I was explaining that to a friend of mine, and he was like, what's there to say? It's a bookshelf. I'm like, well, and then he got what he deserved. But that you can also see that you read a 4-page article about the toothpick. He actually wrote an entire book about the toothpick. And earlier today, I watched about 45 minutes of a 2-hour lecture on YouTube about him talking about the toothpick. And you would wonder, how is it that you could, how could anybody talk for 2 hours about a toothpick? You can. And that's what I love about his approach, is that objects that we just, the amount of trial and error and design and evolution that goes into each and every one of the things that we use on a daily basis. It's astounding on an individual level if you actually think about it. And so he did. He thought about it and he researched it. He does a lot of research in using like patent records. And so you end up with, oh yeah, hold on, I'm going to show you. So he has some of these images in his book, and patent records are just so funny. I love them. So yeah, you end up getting images where they're designing the paperclip. You can kind of see, and yeah, that's a really interesting story there. But yeah, so he thinks about material culture in a way that I hope that you will all now also think about material culture. And he makes some major points, and I'm gonna bring up a few of them here. One is that objects evolve. We mentioned this before. This is kind of related to how they reproduce themselves, but this is, you know, how things take on a life of their own, and kind of they force the next generation more than we do consciously. And you've always heard form follows function, and he disagrees. In general, he's not saying that that doesn't ever happen, but his point, and actually the chapter after how the fork got its tines is called Form Follows Failure, where he really develops that further. And as an engineer, of course, engineers are, that's their concern, is the failure in the design of objects. Because what are you more concerned about when you go over a bridge? The style, the function, or the failure? Rhetorical question there. But so why, you know, why is it that failure determines the form? What would be like failure in a paperclip?
If it didn't hold like papers together, then its form would always obviously have to change.
Yes. Okay. And like I said, I read that chapter and it was like, you wouldn't believe all the different failures that can occur in a paperclip. So it doesn't hold all the papers together. Or it holds all the papers together, but it warps the papers because of the way it holds them. Or it holds all the papers together, but the ends of the paperclip, and I still do kind of experience this a little bit, are sharp and they might rip the paper when you try to pull it out. Okay, has anyone ever had that happen? Or the material that it's made from leaves a mark behind. Or it might hold things tightly at the beginning, but then loosen up over time. Like, there are a remarkable numbers of ways in which something as simple as a paperclip can fail in terms of its design. And what does it fail to do? It fails to perform its function. So it is a failure of function. So in this way, form does follow function, but he's emphasizing the failure of, it's because we have to fix things that objects evolve. It's because we have to make cars safer that cars are so different nowadays. You know, it's because we want our phones to do more that those evolve. Right?
Well, you mentioned the phones, but I was gonna say like they kind of do the same thing. Like it's really trivial, the changes that are happening between them. It's like home button or no home button kind of differences. Like they're not really like failures as a phone. They're just like upgrades for the sake of branding and like consumerism. Like,
would you even call them upgrades as well as like side grades? You know what I mean? It's not like they're changing that much. It's like they're side grades. They just want to make more money. That's like the entire purpose.
Yeah.
Just like.
Well, it is true that a lot of changes in form are from a myriad of other reasons other than failure in function. And it is kind of sad to realize, although I'm proud of everyone for realizing that a lot of the changes in form are really just to have a commercial impact rather than an impact in terms of making it more serviceable. So yeah, I hope that you will be starting to distinguish when you look at things. Why did this change? You know, are they truly trying to make things more convenient, or are they trying to sell us more? And in that case, whose failure was it to begin with that they're trying to remedy here? and then, you know, what is this object trying to get me to do that I wasn't planning on doing and didn't think I had an interest in doing to begin with? So yeah, it's an interesting thing to debate. And I'm not saying it's going to be the governing case when you're looking at every single change ever made. Because a lot of times, you know, you do have things that are changed in terms of just the form. And God, Apple is such a company to point to when you're talking about form. And all right, I'm obsessed with like their wonderful packaging skills. But like, I remember when my roommate got a clamshell laptop. I don't know if you remember those. It was like the early aughts. Like, that was just to make it look different. I'm sure like the computer was faster and had upgrades and stuff like that, but they didn't have to change the way the laptop looked. But it's this idea that changes like in aesthetics, or like when you take something and you make it pink to try to get more women to buy it. Those are things that, you know, you have to wonder, okay, that's not a failure in function. This is obviously them with other kinds of motives there.
Failure to tell.
A failure of originality.
Yeah, a failure of not making as much money as they absolutely want. Or they probably did make as much money as they wanted and then decided, okay, they wanted more. Or they were just like, oh my God, I didn't think that was going to be successful. I bet we could be even more successful. But yeah, your hope is that when objects evolve, they will become better, and everybody will define better in different ways. But you would like for them to be more aesthetically pleasing, as well as more capable of handling all the functions that you need to perform on them, more convenient, and if possible, cheaper, which during the Second Industrial Revolution was a huge thing. Like the paperclip couldn't even be mass produced until the machinery that could do the spring-loaded wires was available. And so it's only when you can make a paperclip super duper cheap that you can actually sell it, because who's going to pay a lot of money for a frickin' paperclip? So that's also a story about, you know, the advancements in industry and the mass consumer market, which of course is also the case with the toothpicks. And so I hope you all read that short toothpick article, and you're welcome for not making you watch a 2-hour lecture about it. But I mean, I love the way he writes, but he's not quite as animated of a speaker as I would have hoped. It kind of reminds me of my dad, though my dad was an engineer. But anyway, so like, wait, I do have another bullet point here. What is it? Okay, here we go. This is my segue to the toothpick. The intended use is not always the same as the actual use. So this is where people take things that have a function and they're like, okay, I'm going to do something else with it. And this is another way that objects evolve, because then it's the manufacturers who are like, oh, well, if people are going to use toothpicks as fashion accessories instead of just like, you know, a way to clean their teeth, then dude, because I almost assigned to you all, but I didn't. There's another article, it's written by somebody else, but it's talking about how somebody is creating, marketing, and selling designer toothpicks now for like $75 a box. How many of you are going to pay $75 for designer toothpicks? Like, I think the most I ever paid for toothpicks was like $5 a box for some like tea tree oil ones once, and that was like a forgivable point in my life. So sorry, but yeah, the toothpick became more popular when it kind of became a status symbol. And of course, who would have ever thought that that would become that way? You don't look at a shard of wood and think status symbol, you know, that takes actual cultural interaction and, you know, the right moment, I guess, in a social and cultural moment for that to occur. But so like some of the notes that I kind of mentally made when I was reading this stick figure article was, this is a case where they made a ton of toothpicks because the guy thought, this is going to be big. But none of the suppliers wanted to purchase them. So the supply actually preceded the demand. They had to create a demand. So how did they go about creating a demand for toothpicks? Do you guys remember? It was really clever and very underhanded. You're like, I don't remember anything over the past couple weeks. Why did you assign us anything? I'm not going to do it. Okay. Well, this is how they did it. They're like, all right, let's hire some Harvard dudes, like classy ass, you know, Jared Kushner types. I'm sorry, that's not classy. Whatever, I'm sorry. But let's hire some to go into restaurants, eat an expensive meal, and ask for toothpicks from the waiters. And when the waiters are like, oh, we don't have toothpicks here, the students will be like, oh, why would I even eat here? This is such a low-class establishment. I need a toothpick, and like walk out. Or they would hire college students to look classy and stand outside of restaurants as if they had just eaten there with toothpicks hanging out of their mouths to look all cool, you know, kind of like James Dean. Or they would hire college students to like go into stores and say, do you sell toothpicks? I want to buy toothpicks. And the stores would be like, we don't stock toothpicks. We never have. And they'd be like, okay. And then the manufacturer would come in and be like, would you like to stock some toothpicks? And they'd be like, yes, actually, we do, because somebody was just asking for them. And then the manufacturer would sell to the store. And then those young men would come back and be like, do you have toothpicks now? And the store would be like, well, yes, we do, sirs. And they'd be like, all right. And so that would just emphasize their need to always stock those things. So you can see here, they're creating demand. Supply does not always follow demand. And so sometimes the function of an object is not enough. You have to create like this kind of unintended cachet to go with it. So the style is more important than the substance sometimes. And then you get this trend, and this is like the late 19th, early 20th centuries, where these young stylish people would just stand around like having toothpicks in their mouths. It was a fashion accessory. And so everyone had to have one. And sure, they might have kept your teeth clean, but that wasn't the point. The point was to be seen with one of these in your mouths because it made you look cool. And so that's what Petroski calls usage drift, when the intended use is removed from from what they actually end up using it as. And in this case, it was the actual use that made them sell more and made them more successful. And then of course the article talks about, well, all the different ways that people use toothpicks that are not cleaning your teeth. I never use a toothpick to clean my teeth. I have dental floss for that. I do have a box of toothpicks in my house. Do you know what I use them for?
Cheese cubes.
Oh, no, I just use my fingers. For baking brownies and cake and muffins. If you put the toothpick into the center and it comes out clean, your baked goods are done.
Wait, I make fun of my mom for doing that.
Why would you make fun of anyone for doing that?
Because I tell her just use a
fair.
fork. You could clean it afterwards. Well, if you're using a toothpick, then like There's tons of
It's
them.
a toothpick.
I didn't know other moms did this. It's a mom thing.
It was,
My mom did as a
it was
too.
even in the article.
mean-
Petroski acknowledges that this is a very common use.
I mean, I'm
Like
not a
top
mom, but I
5
do
uses
it.
of
As an
toothpick.
example of usage drift, I did learn it from my mother.
Wait, Bahi, did you say your mom does it too?
I
Yep.
do it.
You do it, Abby, you're a mom?
No, I'm not a mom. 22.
Okay, so
I'm a mother and I do it as well, so maybe it's a mom thing.
okay, this is random, but has anyone here heard of the Listerine Smell Your Breath campaign when they first came out? Because beforehand, people never were really self-aware of the way their breath smelled, right?
Dr. Lister and inventing that scientific word for bad breath.
And they went around like saying like, "Hey, smell your own breath," and of course, everybody's breath smelled terrible. It was like the 1800s.
Halitosis, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So that's
now we
how
all get to
Listerine-
enjoy the smell of our own breath encased in our face mask.
Exactly. When you were saying that, I was thinking of, I thought like oatmeal started by someone had excess horse grains and then they packaged it as breakfast cereal. And that's when people started switching. Because at first they would eat meat, molasses, like heavy meat for breakfast.
Guys,
And
wait, sorry. Keep going. Sorry.
no, but yeah, they pretty much invented the demand for that too, because they had a bunch of extra horse oats that they just made into oatmeal and breakfast cereal.
I love oatmeal.
Horse food is great.
2, Listerine's original use was the cure for gonorrhea.
Nice.
All right, that's good to know. I like
But
multitaskers.
through the mouth or like through like on the genitals or
Oh, well, there's a rabbit hole.
I also did just want to kind of, this is a funny story, but I was reading, I can't remember which article it was in because this was like a week ago that I read it, but intentionality is not necessarily like determined by like the people who produce it.
Mm-hmm.
An example of this is one of my aunts a couple years ago for Thanksgiving was like really proud of this. Like she had made like a charcuterie board with like cheese and jams and all this junk. And she had been talking about how she found like these really beautiful like cheese knives, I guess, to like spread the cheese on crackers. And my grandfather, whenever we all like got to my aunt's house, and this was her first year hosting, he just like made fun of, they were like old letter openers that she had like found at an antique store or something. Like they look like knives, but like you just put them in the envelopes, like open mail or like break seals, like wax seal. But she was using them as like cheese spreaders for this like cheese board for like appetizer. And she could have gone her whole life. And if my grandfather had not immediately recognized them for what they were, but that probably happened and happens commonly that we designate like our own personal uses to things that like are not fit for that at all.
And I want you all to think about that. And if you notice it over the coming week of a good example of usage drift in your own life, where you use something not how it was originally intended, but how it works for you. And we'll talk about that, bring that in class, or at least bring the anecdote in, and we'll discuss it. Now, we're 3 minutes past 5:25, so I do need to bring this to a close. So for next week, you all have, we're gonna be talking about, I think it's face masks as material culture. Talk about a moment in time. Yeah, we're gonna be talking, you have 2 articles to read about face masks as material culture. They're not very long, so no excuses. Read them both, and make sure that you've also uploaded your essays to D2L. And we're going to talk about material culture in a pandemic next week. Now, those articles are both linked from your course guide. So you have links, you just click on them. They're not like scanned and on D2L. So any parting questions before we go? All right. Well, thank you for the show and tell. We will at some point do another Zoom later this semester, but next week, let's all plan to be back in the classroom in person. unless something comes up and there's emergency and I send you an emergency email. But we'll plan to be in person next week. All right.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.